This video is an introduction and demonstration for the vector reorganization assignment. This assignment allows us to practice using tools in Adobe Illustrator for resizing, transforming, arranging, aligning, grouping, moving, tracing, and recoloring artwork. For this assignment, we're going to be working with multiple different pieces of stock art, cutting them apart, selecting different pieces and parts from that stock art, and reorganizing it into a layout, and then taking that layout and adjusting and reorganizing as needed to fit the different sizes needed. We're going to work with a minimum of 3 vector stock art graphics, so you can use more vector art graphics if you choose, but at a minimum you need to be working with at least 3 different pieces. We're going to be using Freepik.com to select our stock art. They have a wide variety of free vector artwork that you can download and use. Once you've selected your stock art, you want to download it into a folder on your desktop and go ahead and give it a name of your full name and vector reorganization. Using one of the event themes listed below, you're going to create the 3 ads at the specified sizes above. Each ad must represent your chosen subject and be coordinated in appearance. So this is something that you do come across quite a bit in the graphic design field, where you're going to need to create and produce custom graphics for events or other advertising initiatives that are going to be published in a variety of different medias. Maybe you have a flyer and a social media banner and a poster. It's best to do these all in one document for ease of editing and utilizing the advantages of artboards in Adobe Illustrator. Each of these should also include the corresponding logo that's attached, and that logo should be image traced into a vector graphic. Once you've completed this and made your arrangement for all 3 sizes, you're going to save your 3 Artboard Illustrator file into your folder with your vector downloads. Once you've completed all of that, you have all of your files ready to go. You're going to compress that into a folder, compress the folder into a zip file for uploading. So for our assignment, we have the choice of either the Texas Hold'em Poker Tournament, which corresponding logo is the Harrah's Resort logo, the Valentine's Day Party with the Vine logo, or the Shipwrecked Music Festival with the Capital Factory logo. So you're going to choose one of these and then create an advertisement in the 3 different sizes using the pieces of stock art that you have downloaded. So please be advised, sometimes students do get this part of the assignment wrong, and they'll do one event in each of the sizes. So they might do the 5x5 as the poker tournament, the 8.5x11 as the Valentine's Day party, and the 8x3 banner for the Shipwrecked Music Festival, and that would not be correct. We are trying to create a coordinated campaign of graphics. We should have pretty much the same ad in each of the sizes, just resized to fit the space. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I do not like to use exactly what's provided in the assignment, at least as far as content. I don't want to overly influence students on what choices they're making for which event to use or what stock art to use for that event. So today, for demonstration purposes, I will be working with an event for a Halloween party. And this is probably more of a private party. In this case, I don't have a provided logo. This is maybe more of a private party instead of an actual advertisement, but we are going to be working with this content. The process is the same no matter what content you're working with. So our first step, what we're first going to do is browse and select stock art to download. Then we're going to create our folder and move the stock art into that. Then we're going to set up our document with the multiple artboards at the sizes they're supposed to be. We're going to work with our ruler guides to create margins on each of those pages. Then we're going to start pulling in the vector stock art that we have selected. We're going to bring in the text that we're working with. We're going to arrange that layout, then move into resizing that completed layout into the other 2 sizes. And once we're completed with that, we'll save it, package it up with our original stock art that hasn't been edited and compress it to zip. So today I am working with Freepik.com, and I happen to have a premium subscription to use Freepik. You can create a free account, which will allow you to download royalty-free stock art without having to purchase it. Understand that with a free account, your selection options are somewhat limited, but for this assignment, you should be able to find plenty of artwork that you need to complete the assignment. So if you haven't done so already, you should go ahead and create an account with Freepik, because I think you're limited to 1 download a day if you're not signed in with an account. But it is not necessary to purchase a premium subscription. You will be able to complete this assignment with a free account. So a couple of things that I do want to suggest when you're searching on Freepik. In this case, we are working exclusively with vector stock art. So you shouldn't have raster graphics or photographs included in your layouts. You do need to be selecting vector artwork. So my suggestion, first of all, I'm going to start with searching for something, and then I'll see some filters pop up. And in our case, for the demonstration, we're going to be working with a Halloween party. So I'm going to go ahead and search Halloween. And I can just close that window that pops up. Usually when you first start searching, it's going to pop up with an advertisement to try and get you to pay for a subscription to Adobe stock. So here I do have lots of results here. I can see if I scroll all the way down, we have 200 pages of results for Halloween. So what I want to show you here is making sure that you're working with your filters. So if you don't see that there on the sidebar, once you search for something, you're going to see this button for filters. I would suggest if you're using a free account, go ahead and filter by free. So you don't have to sort through all the premium resources that you're not going to have access to unless you pay for them. So go ahead and sort by free. And in our case, because we are working with vectors, we're not looking for photos or PSDs or icons. Go ahead and select vectors, and that will help you narrow down your results to stock art that is usable for you. When you're searching for stock art, particularly for an assignment like this, we're going to be downloading multiple pieces of stock art to use in one cohesive layout. So when you're looking for your stock art, you want to be evaluating your choices based on what stock art is going to work well together. I want to make sure that I'm using stock art that is kind of in the same theme or style. I don't necessarily want to mix and match different illustration styles like this flat kind of illustration style versus this more three-dimensional kind of style. So I want to make sure that the style of artwork that I'm selecting to use in my reorganization assignment is going to coordinate well together and have the same theme and feeling. Additionally, if you have a Freepik.com account, even if it's a free account, you do have access to utilizing collections. And I do recommend using collections to help you kind of organize the selections that you've made. Certainly, you could just go ahead and download a piece of stock art that you like and download several different pieces. However, particularly with a free account, you are limited to how many pieces of stock art you can download per day. And this is where using collections can be especially useful too. So when I'm searching for stock art for a particular project, I'll go ahead and create a collection for that project, and all the pieces of stock art that I like, I'll go ahead and collect it into that collection, which is basically a folder. And then I can go to that collection and all of the pieces that I've moved there, and then kind of narrow down from there and say, okay, I've collected 12 pieces here, but I'm really going to narrow this down to the 3 or 5 pieces that I'm actually going to use. And that'll help you not exceed your daily download limit and can kind of help you better organize your choices and such. So I am going to go to my collections and choose this Halloween Reorganization collection. You can kind of think of this as like a board in Pinterest, but it just collects it all into one place. So I'm actually going to work with 4 pieces of stock art today. So I'm going to go ahead and download all of these. I'm going to go through each one, click the download button, and I will see that that downloads a file to my downloads folder. And for reference, I am working on a PC and using Google Chrome to download. So I just click the button and it downloads there. I'm just going to go through each of these and download each piece. Now I've already kind of done some thinking on this when looking at these pieces and knowing kind of what pieces I'm going to work with and pull apart from. So for this piece, I am going to use this text just to remove the background. I might potentially be changing the color of this. In this piece, I want to use the balloons. From this piece, I want to use just the pumpkins. And from this piece, I'm going to use the background and the spiderweb. I'm pretty much going to use this one in its entirety. Okay, so now that I have downloaded all of these pieces, I'm going to go into my downloads folder. I have these 4 zip files here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these. And I already have the folder on my desktop for my vector reorganization. I'm going to go ahead and paste these files here. So with having these zip files, that maintains that I have the original files here. So I'm going to go ahead. I have all of those collected here. I'm going to go ahead and open each of these. You will see that when you download the zip file from StockArt, you may get a variety of different files. Make sure that you are opening the vector file and not the raster file. So in this case, I have an EPS. That's going to be my vector file, whereas the JPEG is always a raster file. So even though I can open a JPEG in Adobe Illustrator, that won't make it a vector file, and I'll still be working with raster artwork. I want to be able to pull apart these different pieces within the stock art. So I need to make sure that I'm working with the vector file. So I'm going to double click to open that. And that opens here in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go back and just open all of these pieces. So here I have an AI, an EPS, and a JPEG. As long as you're opening a vector format, you're good to go. So you'll see some of them will have license information. Usually that's with the premium resources. You might potentially have a fonts document as well. And that's useful if the document uses fonts that you don't have installed on your machine. You can open this up and usually find a link to where you can download those fonts. So again, here I am missing fonts used in this. If I was using the fonts at all from this, I would probably download them. But I already know that I'm not going to be using any of this text. I'm going to be using the vector graphics from this piece. So I'm not going to bother with installing the fonts because I'm not using that text. And on to the last one. So I'm going to maintain these original files here, but I am, and again, I'm going to ignore the font substitutions here because I'm not using the fonts from this graphic. But I am maintaining the original stock art. As the instructor, when I go to grade these, I want to see what the original piece was compared to how you used it in your document. So it's important for me to see those original files that are unedited and why they need to be included in your assignment. So I have these 4 pieces open. Now I'm going to go into the next step of setting up my document. So I'm going to go to File, New. I'm going to go ahead and name this with my name. And for you, this should be your first and last name. And I'm going to call it Halloween Party because that's the event that I chose to complete. So I am going to go ahead. I know that one document needs to be 8.5 by 11. One is 5 inches by 5 inches, and one is 8 inches by 3 inches. So these are the sizes and then also the margins that I'm going to need. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell it to be 8.5 by 11 with 3 artboards. And I need margins, but not a bleed. So I'm going to ignore this bleed here. None of these are going to be set up for bleed. These are going to be printed, so I do want to stick with the CMYK mode and the high resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and create my document there. So now I see that I have a document that has 3 different artboards. But the artboards are not the size that I need each of them to be. So one of them is correct, but the other two need to be changed. So I am going to go here into my properties panel and I'm going to click edit artboards. So for each of these artboards, I can change their size, I can move their position around. I'm also going to rename them. So this first artboard, instead of calling it artboard 1, I'm going to call it flyer. The second artboard, I'm going to reference my instructions. It needs to be 5 by 5, and that's an advertisement. And I'm going to change its width and height here to be 5 inches by 5 inches by 5 inches. Okay, so in my last artboard, I'm going to call this the banner. And it needs to be 8 inches wide by 3 inches tall. So I have my 3 artboards. One of the things I like to go ahead and do, these were kind of evenly spaced when I started with all the same size documents. Now that I've resized them, they've kind of got different spacing here. I do want to go ahead and rearrange the position of my artboards, and I tend to like to work with my artboards in just a horizontal straight line. So I'm going to click this rearrange all on the properties panel, and I have the options for the layout here. This creates more of a stacked layout that we started with. I think I want them to just be arranged by row. And I'm going to give them just a little bit of extra spacing. I think I'm going to give them about a 1/2 inch of spacing between each of the artboards. Okay, so that has lined them up all at the top. It's given them even spacing between the artboards, and it's just a little cleaner arrangement for me to work with, especially when I move into creating my guides. So in Illustrator, you do not have the option when you create your document to establish margins. We're going to have to use ruler guides to create margins for each of our pages. So looking at our instructions, the flyer has 1/2 inch margins on all sides, and the other two, the advertisement and the banner, have 1/8 inch margins. So I am going to zoom in a little bit to my first. I'm going to start with the first artboard and then work my way across. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that my ruler guides are visible, and they currently are not. So I'm going to go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers. And that brings up my rulers on the top and left side. So I'm going to go ahead. I know that I need 1/2 inch margins on this first flyer layout. So I'm going to grab a guide, and I like to be very accurate with my guide placement. So here I am going to make sure that the guide is selected, and it's not letting me select it, which means that my guides are locked. So I'm going to go to Guides, Unlock Guides, and that should allow me to select this guide. Now I know it's selected because it is turned blue. That tells me that it's actively selected. And once it's selected, I can go here in the Properties panel. Here I don't have to worry about width and height. I have to worry about what is its position on the X or Y axis. So the y-axis measures vertically across the page, and the x-axis measures horizontally across the page. So I know that if I have 1/2 inch margins, if my 0 point is here at the top left corner, then I can just type in the value of 0.5, and that positions my guide. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the next one for the bottom of the page. And I know that if my page is 11 inches tall and I need to subtract 1/2 inch for the margin, then the placement of this guide needs to be at 10.5 inches. And I was actually pretty close drawing that. I was 10.5677. So I'm just going to delete that, have it at 10.5 inches. So I'm going to do the same thing for my left and right side guides. I'm going to grab it from the ruler on the left side here. I'm going to roughly drag it in place. In this case, I'm going to be using the x-axis. And so that's going to be 0.5, 1/2 inch. And again, I'm going to do this math. So if my document is 8.5 inches wide minus the 1/2 inch margin gives me 8 inches, that's where I need to position my guide at 8 inches. Now keep in mind that when you're working with a document that has multiple artboards, particularly if those artboards are different sizes and or if they have different margin dimensions, we're going to be drawing these guides and we're going to see some duplication of guides on different artboards. That's okay. You just have to pay attention to which set of guides you should be paying attention to for that particular artboard. So I see that because I drew the guide for this first artboard, it is cutting across my other two artboards. And again, this is why using the layout for your artboards, it's going to minimize some of the crossover between guides overlapping multiple artboards. And so that's why using that rearrange tool can be particularly useful. So in the second one, I have a 5" by 5" advertisement, and it needs to have 1/8 inch margins. So 1/8, I actually have to do the math on that. 1 divided by 8 equals 0.125. So I'm going to do that same math here. I'm going to draw a guide, and I'm going to tell its x-axis to be 0.125. That's the decimal placement for 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to draw another one. So 5 minus 0.125. Sometimes I have to get my calculator out for this to determine these. So 5 minus 0.125 equals 4.875. That's where I need to position this guide. 4.875. So I see that I have an extra guide here on my page. Because it's a guide, I'm just going to have to ignore it and know that this doesn't apply to this artboard. But I do have guides for where my margins need to be positioned for these other two artboards. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pull from the left that one because we are measuring from the 0 point. And when I activated this artboard, it did move the 0 point over. So I can select this and tell this to be 0.125. And again, I'm using the x-axis now because I'm measuring horizontally across the page instead of vertically. Since this is a 5" by 5" advertisement and the measurements for width and height are the same, I can use the same measurement on the side as I did for the bottom. So that position needs to be 4.875. And lastly, I'm hitting the spacebar key to switch to my grabby hand tool and repositioning my document. So my first guide here is correct because I need an 1/8 inch margin on this design as well. So that one is already correct. And then I've got this extra one that I can just kind of ignore. So I'm going to go ahead and draw one for the bottom. So this time it's only 3 inches tall. So I need to do 3 inches minus 0.125 inches is 2.875. I'm going to select my guide and make sure that it's positioned at 2.875. That was the incorrect axis there. I positioned that for X when it should be Y. With the guides, they kind of only go in one orientation, so if you type it in the wrong field, you're not really going to see it move like it's supposed to. So back here, I'm just repeating the steps that I showed earlier. So here I have 0.125. And again, 8 minus 0.125 is the 7.875. I'm going to drag this over here. 7.875. And now I have my guide set up. I'm hitting Control-0 on a PC. It would be Command-0 on a Mac. Actually, I need to hit Shift-Command-0. Excuse me, that is Control-Alt-0, so that would be Command-Alt-0 on a Mac to fit the whole spread in the window. So I know that I'm working with this space. Ooh, that's a circle. I'm working with this space here for my guides. I'm working with this space here for this advertisement layout, and this space here for the banner. So I do have some guides that might be in my way for some particular layouts. I need to pay attention to which guides are working for this assignment. So my next step, what I need to do first, I want to make sure that I do not move my guides once I start putting artwork in place. So I do need to go to View, Guides, and lock my guides. So now once I have them in position where I want them, I don't want them to move, so I do want to lock them. So for me, in a project like this, I usually like to start with the layout for the biggest space that I have and then kind of work my way down into smaller sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on the layout portion of this. I'm going to collect my different pieces of art. I'm going to start with my background. I'm going to copy and paste my text and bring it in here. I'm actually going to go ahead and start with that text. So this is the text that I'm working with. I have a Halloween party, the date and the time. Here's a fun little promo that there's going to be a contest for costumes and what the prizes will be for. We've got some music, we've got free admission, and the location of the Halloween party. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste it onto the side so that I just have it ready. And when I'm rearranging my vector artwork, I really do think about the content that I have and what space I need to be leaving for that content as I start rearranging things. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some of these pieces apart and working with them. I'm going to start with my Spiderweb background. So I am going to select this, and you will see a lot of times this is either grouped or in a clipping mask. I'm pretty sure this is in a clipping mask. And we may or may not have to work with ungrouping or releasing a clipping mask with some of these artwork pieces in order to work with them in our layout. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here. You will see a dramatic difference in this coloring because this is a CMYK document, and what I copied it from was an RGB document, and RGB colors are going to be much more vibrant than what you can get out of printing. So that is normal to see that dulling if you're copying from RGB to CMYK. I'll probably make some color adjustments on this to make this brighter in the CMYK format. So one of the things that I want to do, I do want this to fill most of my background, and these are a different orientation. So I am going to go ahead and rotate this using my object menu. So I'm going to do Object, Transform, Rotate. And I'm going to tell it to rotate -90 degrees. And I do encourage you always turn your preview button on so you can see what it's doing before you actually commit to making those changes. That is the way that I wanted to rotate it. I wanted more of the spiderweb to be at the top than the bottom, so I rotated it in the correct direction. So I'm going to be working with trying to fill my space. This is where my guides are useful. I'm going to position it so it fits here. So this isn't quite as wide as I need it to be, and it's a little bit taller than I need it to be. But we do also know that this is in a clipping mask, and I can know that for sure by going here, and I see that it does give me the option to release a clipping mask. In this case, I don't actually want to release the clipping mask. I just want to modify where the clipping mask is being applied. So I'm going to double click on this artwork to enter into isolation mode. I'm going to double click. So this allows me to work within this clip group without actually releasing the clip group. So the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the square, the rectangle that is being used as the clipping mask so that it fits the space within my margins. And if I need to, I'm going to zoom in to make sure that I've got that perfectly aligned with my margins. I potentially could also select this and use my transform panel to type in values, like specific values that I want to use. But I just want to get this pretty close to my margins. And since this artwork apparently was much bigger than the mask, I can tell that this artwork here extends this clipping mask quite a bit. So that works really well for what I'm working with here and how I'm going to have to resize it. I've got a little extra there to play with if I need it there. So I'm going to double click to exit the isolation mode. And now I'm going to start bringing in some of the other pieces, but this is what my vision was for using as the background. Actually, before I start bringing other things in, I'm going to double click to go into isolation mode. I want to make sure that I'm selecting this purple gradient background. I am going to go ahead and edit that gradient, particularly the colors used. I'm going to double click on this stop. I just want this to be a little bit of a brighter color. I'm definitely going to punch up the magenta a little bit and maybe bring down the cyan just a hair to brighten that up a bit. And then I'm going to select this other color stop over here. And it just feels really dull and muted. I think I'm going to bring up the magenta there. Oh, that might be a little, that's definitely brighter, but it's a bit much. I'm gonna bring that down just a little bit. I just didn't want it to be quite so muted looking when we converted it to the CMYK mode. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and commit that change and exit out of the isolation mode. But I wanted to go ahead and make that color adjustment before I started making or adding any of the other artwork in. I'm going to go ahead and come here. Again, I said that I'm not going to be working with this text. My plan was to take these two pumpkins, and this is what I'm pulling from this piece of stock art. And this is why working with vector stock art is so fun to do and so convenient to work with, is it's very, very easy to just pull pieces apart, their whole shapes and paths. So unlike your raster artwork that's just pixels, it's just very easy to select it. This is already grouped or potentially in a clipping mask, so I'm going to double click into isolation mode until I get just the pieces that I want. So this is all still grouped together. I'm going to double click again, and I have this pumpkin selected, and I also want to select this other pumpkin, so I'm going to shift click to select both of them. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C on a PC or Command C on a Mac for copy, and go ahead and paste this over here. I'm not exactly sure where I want this just yet, so I'm just going to set it off to the side for the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and start bringing in some of these pieces. So with this, I wanted to keep some of the balloons. I'm not sure how much of the balloons I'm going to use, so I'm going to go ahead and just select pretty much all of the balloons. We see that all of this is grouped together, so I'm going to double click to drill down into this group. I think I want that orange balloon and maybe those. So again, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to use them just yet. I'm just going to copy and paste them into my document, go ahead and start getting all my pieces together and work from there. And then the last thing I wanted was this text for the Halloween party. And this was not grouped, so I'm going to drag to select all of it and then use the Shift key and click this black background that I don't want to unselect it. And I'm going to copy and paste this into my document. So, and I see when I bring these in, all these things are all different sizes. So I'm definitely going to have to scale some of these pieces so they fit better in my arrangement. And I'm probably going to go ahead and make some color adjustments here as well. I would really like to work with a brighter green here. And because these are grouped, I'm actually going to select both of these. And I'm going to use a really cool feature in the edit menu to recolor artwork. So I'm going to go to edit, edit colors, recolor artwork. And I see here that I get this color wheel. I can make some global changes here. I'm going to choose the advanced options. And this gives me all of the colors in the selected artwork, and I can kind of change them individually. But what's nice about this is when I change these colors, I've got 3 different balloons that use those teal green colors. I want them to be more of a brighter green. And so I can change all of them at once and make sure that they all match. So I'm going to double click on this color. I'm going to add quite a bit more yellow to it and drop some of the cyan. So it's much more of a bright lime green. I'm keep doing that for these. I'm definitely going to pull the magenta out of this one. and some of the cyan out of it. It does need to be darker than the other color, so I am going to make sure that I have some cyan. And I'm just going to go through and make adjustments to these colors. I can also use the color picker here if I double click on it. I'm just going to bring the slider down a little bit so that I get more into the greens and less into the blues. And some of these don't necessarily look great on this in this menu, but they are looking pretty good in the previews that I'm seeing applied to the balloons. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my main two greens here and definitely make sure, I think I'm bringing cyan down to about 40. That usually makes a nice bright green. And then this one I can bring it down more into the 60s maybe. That's definitely giving me more of the colors that I want there. I'm not sure why it didn't select this balloon too. I'm gonna make sure that I select, that should have updated with that. I guess it's using slightly different colors. In that case, I'm actually just gonna remove this balloon and use this one over here. I'm going to just go ahead and select the different pieces here and remove them, make sure that I'm getting that shadow there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this purple balloon. Then I can kind of keep this in its group. I'm going to bring this over here. It's going to need to get a little bit bigger. I'm going to select it. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. So I'm going to hover over this corner until I see the rotate tool pop up. And I'm going to hold down the shift key when I scale this so it maintains the proportions. It needs to be just a little bit bigger than this black balloon because I think it's a little more forward than the black balloon. And then I'm also going to remove this extra string that isn't attached to anything anymore. Oh, I need to get into this isolation mode successfully. Okay, so I've actually, what I'm going to do is, this is a longer one than the one that I have, so I'm just going to move it over there so it works for this balloon, and then I'll go back into this balloon and remove the short string that goes with that balloon. Okay, so I have a collection of balloons here. I want to group that with the rest of these. So I'm hitting Control G on a PC. It would be Command G on a Mac. You can also do that from the Object menu and choose Group. I'm going to kind of position these around a little bit. Right now, I'm not super concerned about my margins. I'm going to show you my trick at the end. There's two kind of ways that you can preserve your margins when you have artwork that's going to exceed it and let it crop. And I'll show that at the end when I've completed all three of these artboards. So I do kind of like this artwork here. I like these pumpkins. Oop, I wanted to grab both of them that are over here. And I think they look really good there. My problem is that I don't like that this one is positioned here. I could reflect them because they're grouped separately. I think I'm just going to move this pumpkin over to this side, maybe bring them up just a little bit, and then bring both of them over. So I'm creating kind of a space here between the two graphics that are being used to give me some space to arrange different content of my text for the flyer. So I've got those arranged there. Now I'm going to take this Halloween party, and I think I want to use that green color instead of the orange. I'm not sure yet. I am going to go ahead and group these because I've got a lot of little pieces there. So I'm selecting over these. I'm going to hit Control or Command G to group. Now, obviously, this is very, very small compared to the other artwork, so I need to hold down Shift to make sure that I'm maintaining proportions and drag to scale this up. So I really want this to stand out. This is the attention-getting portion, the kind of headline that's going to draw attention in. And yeah, when I'm looking at it, I like the contrast of the orange against the purple, but I wonder if that green is going to be a little more contrast, pop a little bit more. So since I have this grouped, I'm going to double click to go into isolation mode, and I'm going to drag to select all the parts here that are orange. So I've got this kind of grunge scatter effect and then also this text. So I'm going to double click on my fill in the appearance panel. Actually, I'm going to click on it from my tools panel, and that opens my color picker. I'm going to use that same 40% cyan, 0 magenta, 100 yellow to get that bright green, like hot neon green. And yeah, I think I do like that against that background a little bit better. So I've kind of established a color scheme. I've got the purple, I've got the bright green, and then I've also got the orange that can be used. And honestly, I think I need a little bit more pop of orange. I think I'm going to replace this balloon here, the purple balloon, because it's kind of getting lost against the background, with this orange balloon here. I want to position it pretty much exactly where the other one is. I'm going to bring it to the front, object arrange, bring to front so I can see it better. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to hold down the shift key while I scale, and I'm going to size it approximately the same size as the other balloon. Yep, and then maybe rotate it just a little bit. Using keyboard shortcuts to zoom out there. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit, because this orange balloon didn't come with that glow like the purple one did. I'm actually going to cut this, and I'm going to go into isolation mode to get to this balloon. It's a grouped item, so I'm going to double click again. And so I want to delete the balloon. I want to keep this circle that has that glow there. I'm also going to delete its string. And then I am going to Control F or Command F and paste in front. And that pasted it over there. I'm going to move it back into position over here on top of that circle. And up just enough that it covers up that other balloon string. Okay. And I do like that a little better. I've got a little pop of orange here. I am going to rearrange that whole balloon though. I need it and the circle. I'm going to group those together. I'm going to move this over just a hair. Oh, I accidentally grabbed that string. Should not have been a part of that group. I'm going to paste that back into this group and line it back up with that balloon. You know, sometimes it's easier to fix artwork than hit undo several times. So whichever thing is easiest. I need to cut that and put it into this group. And make sure it's lined up. And then I want to take this group and make sure that it is this group here, that it's to the front. So I'm going to do object arrange, bring to front. So all those other balloon strings are behind this one. That's just looks a little bit cleaner. But that should still be more forward. I'm going to take these two and say send backward. I don't want to send it all the way to the back, but I do want to send it backward until it's not visible there. Okay, so that works. So now I've got all of my pieces arranged. I'm going to go back to my text over here. So I already have the text Halloween party for my headline. So now I need to start working with, I'm going to pull the dates separately. I'm going to cut that into its own text box. I'm going to take the costume contest stuff and put it in its own text box. I think I'm going to keep these two things together. And the reason I'm splitting this up into separate text boxes is so that it's easier for me to arrange in my layout around the graphics that I have placed. So I do have the Halloween party. I want to follow that up with this. I know this is hard to see right now. I need to make sure that I don't move that. But I'm going to go ahead and start just kind of arranging a few of the things here. And then I'm going to start working with colors and fonts to create a nice design. So it doesn't do me any good to have this layout here if I can't read the text that's on it. So obviously I need to make some changes there. So I'm going to start with using white. And I'm definitely going to change my font so that it's much easier to read in the background. I'm going to go to my character panel. Not sure why my character panel doesn't want to open up there, but I'm going to choose a different font. I'm probably going to choose something really close to Party for right now. And I think the closest that I have for that is Acumen. I have a copy of Acumen Variable Concept, and it's a really awesome font to work with because there are variable concept fonts have so many different variations on what, how condensed or how not condensed the font is. So I do want this to be pretty condensed. And I'm going to go ahead and start with, so here's semi-bold. Go ahead and make this quite a bit bigger, so that'll help it be easier to be read on the background. I'm going to bring this over here. We have music provided by, obviously I'm going to have to make some adjustments to my text boxes. I want this to fit in this space here, so I'm going to have to push this to a next line. Music provided by DJ Zombie. For emphasis, I really want the DJ name to stand out, so I'm going to make that a heavier weight and then also larger, about to line up with the size of music provided by. I need to reduce my leading just a little bit here because that's kind of too much. And then I also want free admission. I want that to be a little bit bolder, so we're gonna do black. And then I'm gonna make that all caps so it stands out a good bit too, and then increase its size just a little bit. I'm gonna remove that extra return there. But I do want to change the leading here. I do want to have a little bit of separation. Music provided by goes together and free admission is something else. And then I'm going to move this around just a little bit until it's positioned where I want it. So here again, I'm going to work with creating some emphasis. This is definitely, I'm actually going to use my eyedropper tool here and do the same text formatting as DJ Zombie. So that gets nice and big. Costume contest. I think I'm going to go into my paragraph panel and make that centered. Actually, that looks pretty good. Kind of centered under Party. I'll make sure this is centered too. I think that looks fine as it is. So I'm going to take these two items and use my alignment tools. So my align menu, I want to make sure that I'm aligned to the selection. So that is selected there, and center them to each other. I want both of these to be centered to each other so I have nice good alignment. And then visually, I'm kind of trying to align that to the word Party there. All right, so this is looking pretty good. I have overset text here, so I definitely need to make sure that I'm addressing that and making my text box bigger so you can see that. And I do want some things to stand out just a little bit more. This address can be just a little bit bigger. And I think I'm just going to use one of the colors here and just draw a box there. You can add other little custom shapes as needed. I want this to stand out here at the bottom. I want to have something to draw attention down to the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to use a box here, and I'm going to color it with the same green that I was using in the text for Halloween. I'm going to zoom in here. That is aligned with my margin guide here. And I'm going to object, arrange, send backward. And I'm going to send it backward again because not only do I want it behind the text, I also want it behind the little pumpkin. And so I might have to step backward a few times until it gets behind the pumpkin. Actually, I'm kind of impatient there, so I'm going to take this pumpkin and just bring it all the way to the front. That's fine if it's all the way to the front because it was already overlapping the other one. And so that was a faster process. So now I have artwork that I'm reasonably happy with the layout. Certainly there's probably other things that I could do with this, but I have taken 4 different pieces of stock art and collected and arranged them into a nice layout with the content that I needed to use for my flyer. So I'm pretty happy with this layout, and I'm going to move forward with copying and resizing this to the other 2 sizes. So I'm going to click to select Oh, I drew those boxes earlier. I'm going to delete them. We don't need those. I'm going to click and drag to select all the artwork on the page. I'm going to hold down the Alt and Shift key to duplicate this, but keep it in line. And then I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and move this up so that it is aligned with my margin. What I want to do is go ahead and align this with my margins for this document that is the 1/8 inch and not the 1/2 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and resize it as is, just so it fits in width, and then I'll take a look at getting it to fit in the height. So I am going to hit E on my keyboard to switch to my free transform tool. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just scale this until it fits. Oh, that's trying to rotate it. I'm going to scale it. I might zoom in a little bit so I can make sure that I'm getting right there with my margin. And since I have some pieces that are exceeding the margin, I got to pay attention to which box I'm getting lined up. I'm trying to make sure that this background box is lined up with that margin. And it's looking pretty good. That is pretty close, close enough for government work. Oh, but it did shift it over on the other side, so I do have to be careful. Sometimes that does happen. It will shift when you scale from one side. So I'm just going to get this until I'm reasonably happy with it fitting within the margins in the width. Then I'll switch back to my selection tool, go ahead and move it up. So I see with my guides here, I have quite a bit of artwork that's kind of exceeding the page here. So I'm going to go ahead and start working with trying to size this. I definitely have room to move this stuff up. I'm going to go ahead and grab those pumpkins. All of this is aligned nicely. I'm going to go ahead, just grab all of this and bring it up so that it is sitting within my margins. Now some of my stuff is in the way, so I'm going to have to, some of this might have to get a little smaller. And I think what I'm going to work with first is making these pumpkins quite a bit smaller so that I've got more room for my text. Yeah, I can resize them until they're not interfering with this text here. And then I might have to make this box a little bit wider. In this case, because I need room in the height, but I've got plenty of room in the width, I'm going to make this address 1 line instead of 2. I'm removing the return there. I'm going to select all this text, make it a little bit smaller so it fits in this box. And reposition it here. Now this box needs to be smaller as well to work with now that I have 1 line of text instead of 2. And I can go ahead and keep my music provided by here. Actually, in this case, I think I'm going to change it to left align and kind of line up with this balloon because that makes more sense in this layout and it stands out a bit more on this background. So then I'm going to work with my spider webs here. It's really kind of dark up here. I think I'm just going to move the whole thing up a little bit. And then I am going to adjust my clipping mask so that it fits within my margins. And I can do that by double clicking into the isolation mode and selecting this box and bringing it up until it meets the guides that I'm using for my margins. I'm going to zoom in there so I make sure that I'm pretty accurate with my box there. This is important. It's hard to see this box because it has no stroke and no fill. That's what happens to your boxes when you make clipping masks. So I can tell where it is because I don't see any of the artwork outside of it, but it is important to make sure that you're selecting the right thing, that you're selecting the shape that is being used as the mask, and that you're not selecting the artwork that is being masked. So we see that's part of what that mask is. I'm going to hit undo there so it stays positioned where it is. And I'm just going to exit out of the isolation mode there. So now that I'm happy with this layout, I'm going to repeat the step as before. I'm going to select all of this artwork. I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and drag it over. So that's duplicating it and keeping it in a straight line. And I can just go ahead and line it up with the margin guide on that side. So in this case, because this is a horizontal layout, I need to do more of like a side-by-side layout for my content instead of the more vertical layouts that I was using before. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and edit this background. I think that's the easiest for me when kind of looking at my space. So right now I have the content selected. I need to make sure that I have the box selected for the clipping mask. I've got that now. So I'm going to go ahead and resize it so it fits within my margin guides. In this case, I don't really want to, I can move this around. I don't necessarily want to make this artwork much bigger so that it fits in with. So here, I'm going to select everything, but deselect the shape that is being used as a mask. So now I have all of these pieces that are being masked selected, and I'm going to go back and rotate it back to the horizontal orientation. So object transform, rotate. In this instance, because I know that I'm doing like exactly 90 degrees, and I'm going to use 90 instead of -90, so it rotates in the direction I want it to rotate. But this is where having that preview is very useful. And I like just typing in the values. When I know I'm doing exactly 45 or 90 or 180, it's easier to type it in than to try and get it right manually with the rotate handle. So I just need to reposition my artwork a little bit here. And in this case, I am going to have to make it just a little bit bigger. So I'm hold down the Shift key and scale this up just a little bit. Reposition it so that my spider web is where I want it visibly on the page. And I'm happy with that. So I'm going to double click to exit the isolation mode. So now that I have my background in place, it's a little easier to see where I want to rearrange my artwork on the page. So I'm going to start with the balloons. I'm going to move them over here. And I'm losing that orange balloon, so I'm gonna scale it just a little bit so the orange balloon is included as well. I'm gonna go ahead and grab all of this here, and I'm holding down the Shift key to unselect that background. I don't want to select the background too. I'm gonna go ahead and move this over just a little bit so I can bring these pumpkins up. In this case, I'm going to overlap the pumpkins a little bit so that they're not exactly in the same line. They're going to fill the space on this side over here a little bit more. And then as needed, I'm going to move this stuff over. I might need to make this just a little bit smaller. I don't want those to overlap. I'm going to undo that because I needed to hold down the Shift key. I need to make sure that I'm maintaining proportions whenever I scale these items. So here I'm going to put more of this information to the side. Halloween party, it's going to be this date. Here's information about it. This is too big, it's not fitting, so I'm just going to make that smaller so that it fits how I need it to. And then in this case, I really have this big space here, so I'm probably going to take this music provided by and the free admission and put that in this green banner. I'm going to extend this banner so it's behind the pumpkin. I also need to make sure that this is brought to front. Arrange, bring to front, so it's in front of the banner. And that will allow me, I'm going to take this text and kind of center it across this banner in one line instead of multiple lines. And because these are two different ideas, I am going to insert a bullet character. Did a keyboard shortcut there on a PC. And I do, in this case, I do want to make them, I like that I have different font weights here, but because it's all one line, it's very weird to look at it in different sizes. I'm just going to go ahead and set these to all be the same size, maybe just a hair smaller, and center it in that space by, my box is basically center, so I center aligned the text as well. And just position that so it's visually center with that box. And I might move this up just a bit. And then I can put this address here. And I see that my guide came up showing that this was centered as well. But I don't like how this box is just hanging here. I want something to cover it up. So I am going to edit these balloons to bring them a little closer together. I've got a big gap here, which made sense in the other more vertical layouts. But I'm just going to close up that space a little bit now that we're in this shorter space. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. I'm really happy with how these layouts are looking. I do have these guides being utilized to create margins, but I do have artwork that is exceeding the margin. And so that doesn't work for my margins. Now that I'm done with my layout of my objects, I need to do something to fix this artwork that is hanging out on the side. So I'm going to show you two different ways that I do this. Either one of these methods is correct. In one method, I use shapes to create kind of like an overlapping layer so that in just white so you can't see through it. So it's kind of a margin there. The other option is that you can select your artwork and apply a clipping mask to it. Depending on what you're doing, either one of these will work. If I need to very quickly and easily switch back and forth between seeing it with the margins or without the margins, then I kind of like using shapes to do this. So I'm going to do it one way for this first one, and then I'll do it the other way for the other two. So one of the things I like to do, I definitely like to work with my layers panel for this. I'm going to create a new layer that is layered to the top, and I'm going to call it my margin mask. Sometimes I just call it margin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a shape that fills the whole background of my ad space. Then I'm going to draw a shape that is the size of the live area inside of my margins, and then I'm going to divide one from the other. So this first document, I know that it was an 8.5 by 11 document, so I'm going to click and just type in those values, make sure it's accurate. I am going to go ahead and make sure that this is aligned to the artboard, that it is centered vertically. Oh, I'm not on the active artboard. Accidentally drew an extra shape there. I need to make sure that I am working in artboard 1 and that this aligns to center horizontally and vertically. Then I'm also going to draw, I'm going to go to my guides here and I'm going to draw inside where they intersect. I want to make sure that those smart guides for intersect are showing up so that I'm positioned exactly where I need to. Okay, I've got both of these now. Oh, that did not draw it the size that I needed it to. I just deleted that and start over. That's the beauty of working with these tools. It's really easy to undo or just delete it and do it again. Now, I happen to also know these aren't nice round numbers. I know that 11 inches minus ½ inch at the top minus a ½ inch at the bottom, that would be 10 inches. So that really should be 10 inches tall. And 8.5 minus a ½ inch on each side would be 7.5. I'm going to clean that up by typing in those values. Again, I'm going to make sure that it's aligned centered to the page. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select both of these white boxes. And I'm going to use my Pathfinder tool. Here, move my character panel out of the way. I don't need that right now. And I'm going to minus front. And what that's going to do is give me this custom shape here that simulates my margin. I'm going to hit undo so it positions it there. But I have this shape that just covers up anything, any of my artwork. I do see that some of my artwork is still hanging out on the side over here, but because that's outside of the artboard, it wouldn't be included in a print or if I export this file. So honestly, I'm just not going to worry about it because it's not going to have an impact. So that's one way to do it, and I really like doing my margin mask this way because I can lock it, I can show or hide it as needed. A lot of times I do this more when I'm working with margins that I'm showing to a customer for something that bleeds, where I need to send the bleed information to a printer, but I don't want to share that with the customer. And I do see here, I am going to make a slight adjustment. When I first placed this, it kind of looked fine, but now that I have this margin mask here, I really want to move these balloons so that it's not being cut off so much. So I'm going to lock that margin mask. I'm going to go back in here and just reposition this green balloon. And hopefully it's string. Make sure that I'm getting all parts of that balloon. And I'm just going to move it over a little bit. I'm paying attention to that guide a little bit more now, that it's not going to cut off that balloon's face. I need to move that string too. It's behind that artwork. I'm gonna select all of that and deselect that, and that gives me the balloon guy. Having that shape in front is, I'm going to hide that, hide the selection so that I can grab this string that is behind it. I'm having trouble getting to that string in this isolation mode. All right, so I finally got to my string there. Honestly, I think it's an extra one. I'm just going to delete it. Okay, and then I'm going to go back and say show all, because I do want that there. I just needed it out of my way temporarily. So now I'm happier with that when I'm looking at it with the mask applied. So this is important when you are working with a document that has margins, that you have to keep those margins clear. That's what they're for. So we need to make sure that there is no artwork exceeding those margins. And so I've just drawn a white box to cover up that artwork to keep those margins. In this example, I'm going to use a clipping mask instead. So first thing, I do want to do a little bit of math. I have a 5" by a 5" artboard, and I had 1/8 inch on either side as my margins. So 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4. I do know from experience that 1/4 of an inch is 0.25 inches. And so I have that on both sides. So I know that my live area here is going to be 5 minus 0.25, which would be 4.75. And that would be the same for each side since this is a square. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a square and line it up with my guides here. And I'm going to click and type in 4.75, 4.75. And I'm just going to give it a regular fill with no stroke. And I can see, I do want to make sure that this is aligned center to my page. And that's lining up with my margins perfectly. So in this case, I'm going to use this square that I have just drawn as a clipping mask so that only the artwork that's within or overlapping this is going to be visible. So what's important to note with working with a clipping mask is that the shape that you want to use as the mask has to be layered to the front. So if this was, if I arranged this to the back, it wouldn't work. If for some reason this isn't to the front, then you would need to object arrange, bring to front. Make sure that this is the frontmost object. I'm going to click and select all of my artwork for this page, including the square that I'm going to use as the mask. And I'm going to say Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And so it's using that square to crop out any excess artwork. So now, again, in this one, I see I have the same as the other one where I've got nice clear white margins. There's no artwork exceeding it. And in this case, it doesn't exceed off the page either. Everything that's visible is here. The downsides of using this is that now I have this clipping mask. I have to keep going into isolation mode if I want to make any edits. I can't easily turn on and off the visibility of that clipping mask. So it is effective for making sure that nothing else is going to get printed outside of that clipping mask. Clipping masks are very convenient to use. And it would be your choice here which one of these things that you do. Sometimes it's easier to just draw your square and make a clipping mask than it is to kind of do the math to draw the two squares and use your Pathfinder tool to divide them one from the other to minus the front. So either one is fine, is up to you. I do need to reposition this artwork just a little bit. I see that it's not, I need to make that just a little bit bigger because it was not making it to my margin there. So I'm still going to do a clipping mask for this one. I'm just, in this case, I'm not going to be quite as accurate. I'm going to try to be as accurate as possible, but I'm going to use my guides to draw the shape that I'm going to use for my clipping mask. And that's looking good. It's lined up with my margins really well. I'm going to zoom in to make sure, see over here, it's just a little bit, I got to get to that center point. Oh, there's the bottom. Where's my center point? Right there. And bring it in just a little bit so it's aligned with those guides. And again, I'm just going to drag to select all of this artwork. and I can do Object Clipping Mask Make, or you can do Control-7. So now this is within a clipping mask as well. So now that I have all my pieces, and I probably should have done this sooner or earlier on, but I got into what I was doing with these layouts, but we do need to make sure that we save this file. So File, and I'm going to do a Save As. And it does keep the name that I started with, so I need to navigate to the folder that I downloaded my vector stock art into, which is this Specs Creative Vector Reorganization. For you, you should be using your name. And I do want to keep this in Adobe Illustrator format. So I can use all of the defaults here. I'm going to hit OK. And for right now, I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go to my desktop. And I see my folder here. So I have my folder. I see the original stock art that I downloaded, and I also see my completed file that has 3 artboards with coordinated artwork to create a campaign of graphics for this Halloween event. So that should be similar to what you're doing. You should have the same collection of artwork, just rearranged slightly to fill your space differently for your theme that you're choosing, whether that's the Valentine's Day, the poker tournament, or the music festival. So now that I have all of these, I'm going to go back to my desktop. I'm going to select the folder. I'm on a PC, so I'm going to right-click and send to compressed zip. If you're on a Mac, you would right-click and choose compress. Now that I have this file, I'm ready to upload it to Blackboard for grading. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I hope that you have found this demonstration useful, that it is not a tutorial, but a demonstration on how you use the variety of tools available to us in Illustrator to work with existing stock art, but to still be able to create very custom layouts and graphics for the things that you're going to create designs for. Thank you for watching.